Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Support Gems. Today, we're going to be looking at the Support Gem, which I've built this whole character around. It is called Embitter. Embitter is a very interesting support gem. It comes with a cost multiplier of 120%, which does increase the cost of your spell. And it also comes with a very good effect. What it says is support skills which can damage enemies with hits, causing all sources of damage gained to instead be treated as damage gained as extra cold damage for supported skills. Now, if you look at the word gained, it says damage gained as a specific damage type only scales with modifiers to the new type, not with modifiers to the source's damage type unless they're the same type. For example, lightning damage gained from physical damage scales with lightning damage modifiers, but not physical damage modifiers. Damage gain occurs in the same two-step process as damage conversion. Damage over time cannot benefit from gain. I also did a little bit more research into this because I was curious, well then how is damage gain considered different than damage conversion? Well, the answer to that question is that damage gain happens after conversion, not before conversion. And this is interesting because it allows you to get essentially two damage types. So you could potentially have you're converting into, say, like physical into lightning, and then you can have a gain which gains you damage as cold, and the two would work independently as each other because the cold would not be converted to lightning because the gain happens after the conversion, if that makes sense. In this particular case, the reason why this is so powerful is that I'm utilizing the ability Twister. So when you're using Twister, or rather Whirling Slash and Twister together, Whirling Slash has a three-stage process where it kind of gears up and it starts to get more damage. It also makes it so that when the Whirlwind is over top of a specific type of damage, like for instance this type, it converts into a Fire Whirlwind. Now the Twisters, likewise, consumes Whirlwinds to create additional Twisters and deal 80% more damage per stage. Elemental Twisters gain 50% of damage as the damage of the corresponding type. Now what this means is that right now, if I fire off a Twister, they are now Fire Twisters. They gain 50% of that damage as fire damage. But because the Embitter support gem converts any type of gain and turns it into cold gain, it instead turns that fire damage into cold damage on the gain element type. So the damage type that I'm utilizing here for fire doesn't matter because the Embitter gem converts everything to cold. I'm also utilizing the Immolate skill gem with this as well because supported attacks gain 30% damage as extra fire damage against ignited enemies. This also, because the Embitter gem is converting all gain into cold, turns the fire damage that I'm gaining from this into cold damage, which is also really powerful. And essentially converts my entire character into a cold character, which I'm stacking as much cold damage as I possibly can. And you can clearly see this by the monsters shattering. I could pretty much just go anywhere in the game world and shatter monsters. It really doesn't matter. Let's go shatter monsters. Let's go shatter monsters. Let's go shatter monsters after all. And as you can see, nice icy chunks with fiery attacks. Quite odd, right? Now, the Embitter gem did have a patch a little while ago where apparently it wasn't converting cold damage for some reason. So if like you were gaining cold damage, it was not giving you the gain cold damage because it was supposed to be converting all gain into cold, but cold itself was somehow left out of the loop. But they did patch that out, and it is doing more damage now because of it. And it's not even really that expensive of a gem, like in terms of like what it gives you and what it demands. It doesn't reduce your damage or anything, and I think overall it's just a really good option. Now there are some interesting unique items that can potentially work with this, and I've been eyeballing them for my build, but they are kind of expensive. The Embitter gem works with essentially anything that grants gain. And if you take a look at some of the unique items, and let's go over to PO2DB, and let's look at items that have gain on them. So gain damage as And there are things like Churdo Bogs, which gain 1% of damage as fire per 1% chance to block, which would allow you to convert all of that fire damage into cold damage. There's Heat Shiver, which also gains 1% cold damage as extra fire damage per 1% chill magnitude on the enemy, which would in as well also convert into cold damage. And there's a couple other items and abilities that seem to work with this that allow you to essentially take that cold damage or whatever the fire damage or gain lightning damage. There's also Innervate, which also functions. I think Innervate was one of them, where when you kill a shocked enemy, it's not quite as good as Immolate, which allows you to deal the damage whenever you're attacking an ignited enemy. Innervate, I think, pretty much requires you to actually be dealing damage directly to the target, kill it, and then you get the bonus, and it's only like 5 seconds, so it's not as good as Immolate in this regard. But there definitely are a lot of ways that you could potentially add damage. There's also the Painter's Gloves, which I do believe I have a set of Painter's Gloves in my stash. And they also enable gain, which could potentially function through these. So they have, I think it's like 5 to 10%. So if you could get like a 10%, 10%, and 10%, that would obviously be 30% gain, which would then all convert to cold. So you would have even more cold damage through the Painter's Gloves. It's actually kind of crazy. And you would think that like with the 33% convert to cold, 33% convert to fire, 33% convert to lightning, that would kind of like undo all that. But the thing is that since gain happens after conversion, that doesn't actually become the case. And so you still end up with a really large amount of cold damage regardless. It will convert, obviously, all of your elemental damage, like your base elemental damage, into lightning and fire and cold. So you'll have 33% of each type at that point. But then once the gain happens at the end of the calculation, before your modifiers, you're actually going to get a lot more cold damage that way. Unfortunately, this type of modifier just doesn't appear on the panel. It's not going to show you all this extra gain on the panel because the gain isn't happening until basically after everything is done. Like if I take the Embitter gem out, you'll notice that like nothing changes. Nothing changes pretty much at all, right? Because this is not something that occurs before the calculations, before the conversion. The conversion has to happen, the physical damage has to happen, everything has to occur, and then once you actually start getting the gain effects, that's when this gem starts to come into play, and none of that actually shows on my actual DPS panel, which is, yeah. So get used to that one right there, because it's not going to show anything. Honestly, though, it's just a really good gem, and I can't remember is Embitter. It's a tier 2 gem, so it's not even a tier 3 gem, so you can use it relatively early. It definitely is a interesting one from a lot of perspectives. There are also some items, I believe, in the Scepter category that have things like, let's see here, Scepters, all. Yes, the Dark Defiler, which gains 5% damage as chaos damage per undead minion. So this will allow you to gain 5% damage as cold damage per undead minion. The interesting thing, though, is that it only works on the skill that you put it on, right? So my Whirling Slash is gaining fire. It's not gaining cold. So through those gain modifiers, like for instance, when I'm using the Whirling Slash this way, the Whirling Slash is still gaining fire damage, not cold damage, because the Embitter gem is only on the twisters, not on the Whirling Slash itself. So if I let the Whirling Slash explode, it's still going to be doing fire damage, which is also quite interesting, which would allow you to have two different elements at the same time with almost full capacity. So if you have one ability which is giving you a lot of gain, and you can convert all that gain into cold, and then you can have another ability which is doing a different damage type, which is still gaining the damage as the other element, which is kind of neat. I think that's pretty much it for this support gem. It's definitely a neat one, and it can definitely be utilized in quite a few builds. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me. Be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.